welcome to CRN in the studio. I'm Sam Trendall. We're here today to discuss some of the findings of our recent Top VARs report, as well as look back on the last year in the channel and examine what the 12 months ahead may hold. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Paul Barlow from Servium.
Good morning. Hi, Sam.
By Ian Jackson from Imerja.
Good morning. Hi.
By Miriam Murphy from Avnet.
Hi, Sam.
And by Rob Thompson from Redstack Guru.
Good morning.
Thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. We just start with kind of some of the top line findings of Top VARs. We see a huge amount of growth coming from the channel. I think it was 10.1% sales growth for that top 100. So clearly it seems like it's been a really fantastic year for the channel. Paul, what have you seen in the last year? Have you found, has growth kind of kicked on again after a tough couple of years? What have you seen at Servium?
Yeah, Servium's still a relatively young organisation, but in the last year we've seen well into double-digit growth. So certainly I think the market's come back a bit. I think IT is a little recession-proof anyway, but certainly the last 12 months have been very strong for us.
I mean, taking that point about being recession-proof, security is one area of the IT space that people often say is kind of insulated a bit from the economic ups and downs because it's such a necessity. Is that something that you found as hold true, Ian, at Imerja?
That's right, yes. I mean, certainly over the last year, just over, we've seen good steady growth in our security portfolio. We've also seen public sector investment in some larger infrastructure projects, wired, wireless infrastructure, and good growth in the health sector.
I mean, looking at some of the growth areas, I'd be interested to hear from you, Rob. What have you found in the last year or two, say, have been either in terms of technology or vendor partners or in vertical markets? What have been, you know, some of the real success stories for you at Redstack Guru?
Do you know, I think the biggest change at the moment is that the sales cycle's starting to come down considerably. Mm-hmm. We're finding that people who working together with Avnet over the last 2 years, we've generated quite a lot of inquiries that initially were just inquiries, but by keeping talking to them, we've just suddenly found a real glut of people coming back to us because we've used, you know, lots of touching points over the last 12 months. We've basically got to a point where they're contacting us and they are now ready to buy. So, and I think I did say last year when we talked, one of the biggest frustrations was that people wanted to talk, but nobody actually wanted to get to the checkbook stage. So I think the biggest change for me personally and our business has been we're in dialogue far more than we were a year ago, and they are people that really have projects and really want to move. And
Miriam, Rob alluded there to working alongside Avnet in you know, on opportunities. What role do you see distribution playing in the sales cycle when, you know, as the economy kicks back in a bit more?
I think I completely agree with what everyone said about the economy showing really positive signs and it affecting the industry in a positive way. So that's been great. I think this last year in particular has seen a lot of movement. Our focus is very much on supporting partners to work in new markets, work in new technologies. Because we've really seen the growth has been greater in some of those technology sectors than others. Ian mentioned security, of course. We've seen lots of growth in specialist security areas, also in converged infrastructure. Huge amounts of opportunity there, and of course that's been partly what we've worked with Oracle and with Red Guru. The same with many of the other vendors that we've been really privileged to have a full portfolio to work with in that space. So I would say that our role has been very much identifying what the critical success factors are in terms of growth technologies and into which markets, and working with partners on positioning them best from an enablement perspective, from a marketing business development perspective, and technical expertise.
Yeah, sure. Looking at some of the research we did of end users for this report, we kind of tried to find out a bit more about how they, you know, their procurement process for buying products and how they decide what they're going to invest in from a product and technology and a brand standpoint. And one of the things that really came through very strongly was just how clued up the average CIO and IT manager seems, or at least claims to be in our research. And talking about doing extensive proof of concepts and doing a lot of research before they even engage with the supplier. Ian, do you find these days that your customers are more clued up than ever, and they come armed with a lot of information that maybe they wouldn't have 3 or 5 years ago? Say.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the customer's far more savvy than they ever have been. There are two types of approaches we find when people come to us to discuss a potential opportunity. There's the savvy customer that knows exactly what they want. They pretty much come armed with a kit list and almost a bill of materials. They've done the research. They might have even engaged direct with the vendor themselves at a high touch. And they come and ask for a set of a bill of materials effectively. But we're still seeing customers coming to us with outputs and requirements. Yep. And that's mainly when they're looking for a service. And then it puts all the risk on the reseller to come up with the right solution to meet them requirements and give them the outputs that they need. So yes, the customer is far more savvy than they ever have been, but there are still two different types of buyers. Certainly what we're finding, it's all down to what they're actually buying as to how they apply the knowledge that they have as individuals. To
pick up on that point about new technologies, because another thing that seemed to come through in our research was that there are still a lot of CIOs, IT managers who maybe take a sort of safety first approach, and it's kind of, I've always bought HP or IBM for argument's sake, so I'm going to keep buying that. I know what it does.
Yeah, you don't get fired for buying IBM.
Exactly. It's not worth the risk of my job to invest in something innovative. I mean, as a distributor, Miriam, obviously a big part of what you do as a value-add distributor is kind of seeding the market for newer and emerging technologies. What are the challenges you face there, and how do you sort of go about bringing a new technology to market and creating demand for it?
So I think that the key ends up being on the way people are approaching reseller partners and so distributors in terms of what they're looking for. And back to the point that both Ian and Paul referred to, which was you have two types of buying pattern, and the one that's really looking for a total business solution is the one where it's much easier for us to add a real value and introduce new technologies, because the opportunity is really on new technologies combined with some of those tried and trusted partners. So a total solution that encompasses a portfolio that is made from some new and emerging niche technology, plus something more established and proven.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why our success with, and I'm coming back again to converged infrastructure, but one of our successes has been around converged infrastructure, because we've been able to take some of those established vendors, like EMC, like HP, like NetApp, like VMware, and marry them with some more niche lines that are emerging, that are very complementary. And it's actually made us an attractive partner for those new vendors coming up, because they see actually that it's some of those legacy players that are actually helping to pull demand for their portfolio. I think Cisco have also done an amazing job as a vendor at building alliances. And so a lot, in the past, alliances seem to have only been built with those big players. And now the big players are also understanding that, in fact, to really sell a total business solution, they have to be out there looking at cutting edge technologies all the time. And that includes some new and emerging lines. So for us, that's really about building that complementary portfolio, complementary solution, offering a total business solution. And it's much easier if you're having the conversation, which is a conversation with the CIO or the CMO about what's their challenge, what's their problem, and have you considered approaching it this way? And that's the way that we've been able to be successful at bringing in new technologies.
Looking at sort of your case, Rob, as a company, you're very much an Oracle specialist, and so that's obviously a big, well-known, huge enterprise brand. Do you find customers, once they've put that trust in a brand like that, they tend to stick to it? And how much of a challenge do you see from more kind of niche or emerging startup sort of software players?
I think that, again, you can split people into two groups. you've got the people who are very, very loyal to the Oracle brand as clients. They are, it is their backbone of their business. They have invested heavily into it, and they are not going to go anywhere. And then you get the other group, which is either we don't really want to be with Oracle because it is more expensive, or we're already with Microsoft and we're not going to change. So you sort of get two completely separate entities there. To me, one of the problems at the moment is that there are a huge number of larger businesses that are taking margins down dramatically. I mean, in the hardware and software world, there are a number of players, and we all know who they are, who will jump in on a tender when you've done all the work, who will go down to, single digits in order to just take the business because they want the turnover. So what we're finding is that we're still playing in the licensing world. We're still looking. I mean, Oracle's old Redstack diagram, which is why we called ourselves Redstack Guru, is tape through to applications. So we involved in tape, server storage, etc. But we're finding more and more that if we don't differentiate with our own services, we're dead in the water. Even if you get the high ground, you're first in and you're giving the best advice possible, the minute procurement get their hands on it, it could go anywhere. And there's some little fella or little lady sat in a little office whose job is to steal that business at the best price they can get, which is far lower than we as a company can operate. So we have to get ourselves to the point where we differentiate through our services or latest technologies that can make the difference.
Like yourselves, we're a small to medium business. The bulk of our competitors are much, much larger than us, some of the usual suspects, big systems integrators, and we've had some very significant wins against the big boys, a real true David and Goliath. And the way we approach it is we bring with us the vendor, bring with us distribution, and we show that together that we've got the support and the backing of the vendor, so that when we can talk to the customer, we look very strong and very cohesive. And we've found that that's been quite successful for us as an organisation. I do want to pick up on something that you said earlier on the public sector. We deal predominantly in the public sector, not entirely, but over 70% of our business is in the public sector. And we find that the new G-Cloud services and the cloud and G-Cloud portals allows us as an SMB to compete with some of the larger systems integrators. Yes, it's price sensitive, but you go in there with your eyes open. You make sure you've got full vendor and distribution support. You make sure that deals are deregistered and that everybody's got their eyes open what you're working on and what margins you're working on. You can win that business and then start to build that relationship, get deeper, get wider, and start being more consultative from an initial tendered win. And that's our approach.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was meaning by saying, what you don't do is go into that environment if you think you've got a really bad chance of winning.
Yep.
You selectively go in for
Correct.
the right business and you build that relationship, add your services, and then that becomes true value.
And it's all about what you're selling as well. We try and, yes, there are people, going back to the two types of customers, there are people who come at you with a set of requirements, a bill of materials, a list of part numbers, and you treat it as exactly what it is.
Is that business still worth doing?
Of course it's worth doing. It's giving you top line revenue. It makes sure that you keep your vendors happy, keeps your accreditation levels up. It's important, and it's an entree proposition.
Yeah.
You go in there with an equipment win, and that's very much an entree proposition to build a relationship, get deeper and wider, and to sell the real value services that organisations like ourselves, like people around the table, can actually provide. And
Miriam, do you feel that Avnet and perhaps distribution more widely has sort of worked out exactly where it plays in the services world? Is it kind of is it just a SKU-based engagement as the product world, or is it a different kind of style of engagement with the partner?
No, it's a different style of engagement actually. I mean, of course there's a big part of the business that we do in services which is SKU-based as well. We're reselling services from partners. In fact, our total services business is over 22% of our business now, because people don't automatically think about that. Yeah. And that's a mix of where we're reselling services, but also our own services. We've invested in several service capabilities over the last few years, and it goes from 24/7 to implementation to proof of concept to asset management, software development, consulting. That we have a huge range. It tends to be very much specific in supporting some of our partners where it's very resource intensive when they're breaking into a new area. And if we can work with them, and a little bit to Paul's comment earlier, which is when you have a niche area and a client that you've got an engagement with, by partnering with somebody like your distributor, in the case of Avnet, you can absolutely go up as against the Goliath, because the combination of the two is stronger than the single parts. And we've invested heavily in that area, but it's constantly evolving, Sam. You know, it's to say that it's this is it, it's locked and sealed. We'll be moving that ball all through the year to come and the years beyond to look at what are the areas that are the key ones for us moving forward as well. So we're constantly investing and constantly evolving in that space.
I guess sort of adjacent to services is the whole sort of cloud piece. Yeah, I know. I mean, if you're anything like me, exactly. Well, if you're anything like me, every time you hear the word cloud, you just want to go and lie down in a darkened room. But what is it? Is it something you're making money off? Is it something customers, are they actively asking about it? Are you actively selling it? Paul, what's Servium's approach to this whole cloud business?
How long have you got? So we see cloud as absolutely evolution, not revolution. So once you cut through the marketing hype and the stats that the analysts throw up that it's all going to change, it works and it will work for some organisations in certain areas. But predominantly when we're talking to our customers, they're all talking about the hybrid model. They're not saying we're going to go for a pure play for cloud. And also I still think it's in its infancy as far as real strong propositions that, one, the channel can get its head round and provide to its customer, but two, the customer can actually see a real benefit. So I think we're on a journey, and it's not going to finish in 6 months' time. It's 2, 3, 5 years out, the gradual take-up of cloud. And that's very much our approach for customers. We're not going out with one size fits all. It's back to the relationship with the customer, understand their business requirements, and cloud might be one of those offerings that works for them. But it clearly depends on a whole load of parameters, which we would sit down with our organisations and discuss really what is the driver behind this, what are your business requirements, right, does cloud then fit? So I think we're probably fair to say we're taking it slowly. We're not going to go running and jump into it. We're going to work slowly, and there's a little bit of being driven by the customers as opposed to going out and telling them what they should do. We firmly believe that they sort of understand their IT better than we do, and sometimes their IT departments are bigger than us as the whole organisation. So it's a journey and it's a conversation with the customers as we go along.
So if we kind of look further ahead now into what the next year may hold for the channel and what some of the trends maybe we see emerging. Rob, what are the key challenges as you see them? Are there still challenges to growing your business in the current climate, whether it's access to finance or credit lines or, you know, the competitive landscape and margins? What are some of the biggest challenges you still see?
I think the answer to that's got to be yes. All of the above. Looking forward, I was present at a presentation yesterday done by Oracle which had reviewed the success of cloud to date and looking forward. And the interesting thing that I took out of it was the fact that they do expect traditional solutions to continue to grow for a considerable period before cloud takes over. And therefore, I feel very comfortable in the skin that we've got. We've got, you know, specialists and skills in areas that people need them at this moment in time. So for the next 12 months, I think we're just going to do a lot more of what we've done for the last 12 months, but we are going to look at emerging products. We are going to look to get closer to the relationships that we've discussed. Correct, both the guys were saying the same thing about when we go in with our army behind us. And sometimes that army isn't always just Redstack people. We will go in with Avnet, we will go in with Oracle, we will go in, if required, with Fujitsu or HP or whoever to give the right solution for those people. So I think to me, it's more of the same, but do it better, do it more focused. I think the market is opening up a little bit more. I think naturally, as I said earlier, we are starting to get people who want to talk about specific projects with budgets and timescales. And a year ago, they wanted to talk about projects. Yeah. And the timescales were well out. Those timescales are starting to shrink back. So I think for us, it's more of the same, more focused, more concentrated, and build better and stronger relationships with the guys that are behind us. So when the team goes in together, we've got the better chance of winning. And keep an eye on cloud. Yeah. But I think when we hear the statistics of cloud, a lot of those statistics are actually blurred because the amount of business that's being done on Google or eBay or Facebook or whatever, all these cloud solutions, I wonder what percentage of the overall cloud potential market is actually what we do.
Paul, how are you looking for next year? Have you is it all about revenue growth or increased profitability or quality of earnings? What are the sort of KPIs for you for the
again, probably all of the above.
Yeah.
And I think from our point of view, the biggest challenge is almost keeping ahead of the pack as far as understanding new technologies, working smarter. Personally, I think there's within the industry, I'm not sure whether reseller land, distribution land and vendor land actually communicate as well as they could. I think the basic communications, when I look at sales teams and visit distribution, things like the amount of email and telephone calls, is there a better way of working? So we're certainly focusing the next year on working smarter, building stronger relationships, moving back up the chain, as well as working with customers. Yeah. But the biggest challenge is, like I say, keeping ahead of the pack as far as the technology and what we're going to take to the customers and working with the customers. The biggest or the best thing about the coming year is keeping ahead of the pack, what technology we're going to work with, because in this industry, there's always something that you can go and talk to your customers about that might be a benefit. There's always an opportunity. It's not a mature market, and I don't think the IT industry is ever going to mature because from a product and the services and the solution point of view, because there's always new solutions, whether it's BYOD or big data or cloud or all those great marketing terms, there's always something that could bring a benefit to your customer. And clearly you've got to sort the wheat from the chaff, and that sort of relationship working with distribution in particular, helping you sort the wheat from the chaff, and who are the vendors that you want to go and talk to your customers about and solutions. That's sometimes a challenge, but it's a great opportunity as well. So we're very excited about next year.
Well, it's certainly going to be fascinating to see how all these trends play out, and it sounds like it's going to be another good year for the channel. But unfortunately, I think that's all the time we have for today. But I'd like to thank you all again for taking the time to be with us this morning. And thank you too for joining us. We'll see you again soon on CRN in the studio.